The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Kate Middleton sat in her private study, her hands trembling slightly as she held her morning tea. The porcelain cup rattled against the saucer, a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet room. She had barely slept the night before, her mind racing with thoughts she couldn't quite organize, fears she couldn't quite name. Charlotte's laughter echoed from the garden outside, where the young princess was playing with her nanny under the watchful eyes of the security detail. The sound should have brought Kate comfort, as it always did, but today it only deepened the knot of anxiety in her chest. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the way the staff moved around her, their usual easy chatter replaced by hushed whispers that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. The past few weeks had been particularly challenging. William had been away more frequently, attending to royal duties that seemed to multiply by the day. The media attention had intensified following recent public appearances, and Kate found herself scrutinizing every photograph, every headline, searching for hidden meanings in the carefully chosen words. The pressure of royal life had always been immense, but, lately, it felt suffocating. She set down her tea and walked to the window, watching Charlotte chase butterflies across the manicured lawn. Her daughter's innocence was both heartbreaking and beautiful. At just 8 years old, Charlotte was already showing signs of the strong will and determination that ran in the Windsor bloodline, but she was still young enough to find joy in simple pleasures. Kate pressed her palm against the cool glass, wishing she could protect that innocence forever. The sound of approaching footsteps made her turn. James Harrison, one of the senior protection officers, stood in the doorway. His usual composed demeanor seemed strained, and Kate noticed the way his jaw was set, the tension in his shoulders. James had been with the family for over 5 years, had seen them through countless public engagements and private moments. She trusted him implicitly, which made his obvious discomfort all the more unsettling. "Your Royal Highness," James began, his voice carefully neutral. "Might I have a word with you privately?" Kate nodded, gesturing for him to close the door behind him. The click of the latch seemed final, ominous. She remained standing by the window, drawing strength from the sight of Charlotte's carefree play, while James moved to stand a respectful distance away. "There's something you need to know," James continued, his professional mask beginning to slip. "Something that affects Princess Charlotte's safety, and yours as well." The words hit Kate like a physical blow. Her hand instinctively moved to her throat, where her pulse had begun to race. "What kind of something?" she managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. James hesitated, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. As a protection officer, he was bound by strict protocols, but Kate could see the human concern in his eyes. This wasn't just about following procedures, this was personal. "We've been monitoring some unusual activities," he said carefully. "Communications that mention Princess Charlotte specifically. At first, we thought it was just the usual online chatter, people expressing opinions about the royal family. But the pattern has changed recently. The language has become more focused, more detailed." Kate felt the room spin slightly around her. She gripped the window frame for support, her knuckles white against the dark wood. "What kind of details?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. "Information that shouldn't be public knowledge," James replied grimly. "Charlotte's daily routines, her favorite places in the palace gardens, even details about her security arrangements that are strictly classified. Someone has been watching very carefully, and they have access to information that suggests." He trailed off, but Kate could fill in the blanks. The implications were terrifying. Her daughter, her precious Charlotte, was being stalked by someone with intimate knowledge of their lives. Someone who could potentially be anyone, a staff member, a contractor, even someone within their trusted circle. "How long has this been going on?" Kate asked, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "We first noticed the communications about 6 weeks ago," James admitted. "Initially, we increased security protocols without alarming anyone. We hoped it would prove to be nothing more than an obsessed fan with too much time and imagination. But the information has become increasingly accurate, increasingly specific." Kate turned away from the window, no longer able to bear the sight of Charlotte playing so innocently in what she had believed was a safe space. The garden that had always been their sanctuary now felt exposed, vulnerable. Every tree could hide a camera, every shadow could conceal a threat. "Who else knows about this?" she asked. "The senior security team, obviously. The palace secretary has been briefed. Prince William." James hesitated again. "Prince William was informed during his last overseas engagement, but we agreed it would be better to wait until his return to discuss the full implications with you." Kate felt a flash of anger alongside her fear. William knew. He had known for days, possibly weeks, and he hadn't told her. She understood the desire to protect her from worry, but this was about Charlotte. This was about their daughter's safety, and she had every right to know immediately. "I need to see this information," she said firmly. "All of it." James looked uncomfortable. "Your Royal Highness, I'm not sure that would be advisable. Some of the content is quite disturbing, and we're handling the investigation." "This is my daughter we're talking about," Kate interrupted, her voice carrying the full authority of her position. "I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. I need to understand the scope of the threat." After a moment's hesitation, James nodded. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a tablet, his fingers moving quickly across the screen before he handed it to her. "These are just excerpts," he warned. "We've compiled the most relevant portions, but there's much more." Kate took the tablet with hands that were steadier than she felt. The screen showed what appeared to be forum posts or chat logs, the usernames obscured but the content chillingly clear. Her eyes scanned the text, each line more disturbing than the last. "The little princess always feeds the ducks at exactly 3:15 on Tuesdays. She stands on the left side of the bridge, and the female protection officer stays approximately 10 feet behind her. Security shift change happens at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. There's a 3-minute window during handover when coverage is reduced in the southeast corner of the grounds. She's been taking writing lessons in the private paddock. Instructor arrives at 10 a.m. on Saturdays. Only one guard accompanies them to the stables." The words blurred as tears filled Kate's eyes. Someone had been watching Charlotte with the patience and precision of a predator, documenting her movements, learning her patterns. The level of detail was nauseating, but what made it worse was the clinical tone of the observations. This wasn't the ranting of an unhinged individual, this was methodical, planned, purposeful. "There's more," James said quietly, watching her reaction. "References to you as well, and to Prince George and Prince Louis. But the focus is primarily on Princess Charlotte. The posts suggest she's been specifically targeted." Kate looked up from the screen, her green eyes blazing with a mixture of fear and fury. "Targeted for what?" "We're not entirely certain yet," James admitted. "The language is coded, veiled. But there are references to the plan, to the perfect moment, to taking what belongs to them. Our analysts are working around the clock to decode the full meaning." The tablet slipped from Kate's numb fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. She pressed both hands to her face, trying to process what she had just learned. For years, she had lived with the constant awareness that her family was always in the public eye, always under scrutiny. But this was different. This was intimate, invasive, dangerous. "I need to get Charlotte," she said suddenly, moving toward the door. "Your Royal Highness, she's perfectly safe right now," James assured her, stepping to block her path gently. "We've tripled her security detail. There are 4 officers in the garden, plus 2 in concealed positions. No one can get near her without us knowing." Kate stopped, but her entire body was tense with the need to hold her daughter, to physically confirm her safety. "How can you be sure? If someone has this much access to our private information, how can you be certain they haven't infiltrated the security team itself?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. James's expression darkened, and Kate realized she had voiced a possibility that had already occurred to him. "We're investigating that possibility," he said carefully. "All personnel with access to the relevant information are being screened again. Background checks are being updated and expanded. Financial records are being examined for any unusual transactions or lifestyle changes that might indicate bribery or coercion." "But you don't know," Kate pressed. You can't guarantee that the person watching Charlotte isn't someone we trust, someone who has legitimate access to our lives. No, James admitted reluctantly. We can't guarantee that yet. The admission hit Kate like a physical blow. The people she saw every day, the staff who helped care for her children, the guards who were supposed to protect them, any one of them could be the source of this threat. The violation felt complete, absolute. She walked back to the window, her legs unsteady. Charlotte was now sitting on a bench, carefully examining something in her small hands while the nanny sat beside her. From this distance, the scene looked peaceful, normal. But Kate could now see the security officers positioned around the garden, their casual poses not quite concealing their alertness. What happens now? She asked without turning around. We continue the investigation while maintaining increased security, James replied. We're working with digital forensics experts to trace the source of these communications. We're also coordinating with international intelligence services, as some of the posts seem to originate from overseas servers. Kate nodded absently, her mind racing ahead to all the implications. Public appearances would need to be reconsidered. Charlotte's schedule would have to be completely overhauled. The careful balance between royal duty and family privacy would have to shift even further toward security. Does Charlotte know anything is wrong? She asked. We've been very careful to maintain normal routines from her perspective, James assured her. The additional security measures have been implemented discreetly. As far as she knows, it's just a busier than usual week. Kate was grateful for that small mercy. Charlotte was perceptive for her age, always quick to pick up on changes in mood or routine. But she was also resilient, adaptable in the way that children could be when the adults around them provided stability and reassurance. I want to increase the security for George and Louis as well, Kate said decisively. If someone is watching Charlotte this closely, we have to assume they're monitoring the boys too. Already done, James confirmed. Prince William gave those orders yesterday. Again, Kate felt that flash of anger. William was making decisions about their children's safety without consulting her, treating her like a fragile ornament who needed to be protected from unpleasant realities. She understood his motivations, but she was Charlotte's mother. She had every right to be involved in decisions about her daughter's protection. When will Prince William be back? She asked. Tomorrow evening. He's cutting his current engagement short to return home. Kate turned back to face James, her expression resolute. I want a full briefing when he returns. I want to see all the evidence, not just excerpts. I want to know every detail about the investigation, every lead being pursued, every precaution being taken. James nodded, clearly relieved that she was responding with strength rather than falling apart. Of course, Your Royal Highness. The security team will prepare a comprehensive briefing. And I want to be involved in the decisions going forward, Kate continued. These are my children we're talking about. I won't be kept in the dark or treated like I'm too delicate to handle the truth. Understood, James replied, and Kate could hear the respect in his voice. After he left, Kate remained at the window, watching Charlotte with new eyes. Her daughter was laughing at something the nanny had said, her face bright with innocent joy. The contrast between that happiness and the dark threat lurking in the shadows was almost unbearable. Kate thought about all the public appearances Charlotte had made, all the photographs that had been published, all the seemingly innocent moments that had been captured and shared with the world. Had someone been using those images to study her daughter's face, her mannerisms, her reactions? Had every smile been catalogued, every gesture analyzed? The violation felt deeply personal, maternal. Kate had always known that royal children grew up differently, that their lives would never be entirely their own. But she had believed that within the walls of their homes, within the carefully controlled environment of their private spaces, her children could experience something approaching normalcy. Now she realized how naive that belief had been. Privacy was an illusion when you were a member of the royal family. Safety was never guaranteed, no matter how many guards surrounded you or how many protocols were in place. But, even as fear threatened to overwhelm her, Kate felt a deeper emotion rising, fierce, protective determination. She was Charlotte's mother, and she would do whatever it took to keep her daughter safe. If that meant changing how they lived, where they went, who they trusted, then, so be it. The carefree days of her children's early childhood might be ending, but Kate would make sure they had a future to grow into. Outside, Charlotte stood up from the bench and began walking back toward the palace, her small hand clasped in the nanny's. Kate watched every step, memorizing the sight of her daughter's easy confidence, her unhurried pace. Tomorrow, everything might be different. Security might be tighter, freedoms more restricted, innocence more carefully guarded. But tonight, Charlotte would sleep safely in her own bed, protected by her mother's love and her father's resources. And Kate would begin the process of learning to live with a new kind of fear, the kind that came with understanding just how precious and fragile the things you loved most really were. The clock in the drawing room chimed midnight as Kate paced across the Persian carpet, her silk nightgown rustling with each agitated step. Sleep had become impossible since James's revelation that morning. Every shadow seemed threatening, every creak of the old palace walls made her heart race. William's flight had been delayed due to weather, leaving her alone with her fears and the terrible knowledge that someone was hunting her daughter. She had spent the evening maintaining the facade of normalcy. Dinner with the children had been a carefully orchestrated performance of maternal calm, even as her eyes constantly swept the room for signs of anything amiss. Charlotte had chattered happily about her day, blissfully unaware that her every movement had been watched, catalogued, analyzed by unseen eyes. The worst part was not knowing who to trust. Kate found herself studying the faces of people she had known for years, searching for signs of deception or hidden agendas. Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper who had been with the family since Charlotte was born, seemed nervous when serving tea. Was it innocent concern about the increased security presence, or something more sinister? Even Sarah, Charlotte's beloved nanny, had seemed distracted during the bedtime routine. Kate stopped pacing and sank into the antique armchair by the fireplace, pulling her knees to her chest like a frightened child. The formal portrait of Queen Elizabeth hung above the mantel, her grandmother-in-law's steady gaze offering no comfort in the darkness. The weight of royal responsibility had never felt heavier than it did in this moment. Her mobile phone buzzed against the side table, making her jump. William's name appeared on the screen, and she answered before the first ring had finished. Kate? I'm sorry it's so late. I just landed at Heathrow. James briefed me on the updated situation during the drive from the airport. William's voice carried exhaustion and barely controlled anger. Kate could picture him in the back of the armored Bentley, probably rubbing his temples as he always did when stress overwhelmed him. Updated situation? Kate asked, her stomach dropping. What's happened now? There's been another development. More communications, and they're more specific than before. I'm coming straight home. Don't go anywhere near the children's rooms until I get there. Security is repositioning as we speak. The line went dead, leaving Kate staring at the phone in her trembling hand. More specific. What could be more specific than the detailed surveillance reports she had already seen? What new horror had been uncovered while she was helping Charlotte with her homework and reading bedtime stories? She wrapped her robe tighter around herself and moved to the window overlooking the garden. Floodlights now illuminated the grounds, destroying the soft shadows where she had once found peace. Armed officers moved in coordinated patterns across the lawn, their presence a stark reminder of how drastically their world had changed in the space of a single day. 20 minutes later, she heard the distinctive sound of William's convoy arriving. The controlled chaos of doors slamming, radio chatter, and hurried footsteps echoed through the corridors. When William finally entered their private sitting room, Kate barely recognized him. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his tie loosened and hanging askew. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his jaw was set in a hard line she had rarely seen outside of his military days. Kate, he said, crossing to her in 3 quick strides and pulling her into his arms. She could feel the tension radiating from his body, the barely controlled fear that matched her own. Tell me, she whispered against his chest. Tell me what's happened. William pulled back to look at her, his hands gripping her shoulders. They've escalated. The communications we intercepted tonight, they're not just watching anymore. They're planning something specific for this weekend. Kate's legs nearly gave out. This weekend? What's this weekend? Charlotte's writing competition at Windsor, William said grimly. The one she's been excited about for months. Somehow, they know about it. Not just that it's happening, but specific details about the timing, the route we'll take, even the parking arrangements. The writing competition. Charlotte had been talking about nothing else for weeks, practicing her routine obsessively, picking out her outfit with the serious consideration of a fashion editor. It was supposed to be a normal family event, the kind of milestone moment that would create treasured memories for years to come. We'll cancel it, Kate said immediately. We'll tell her she's come down with something, make up an excuse. That's what I thought initially, William replied, running his hands through his hair. But James thinks it might be our best opportunity to draw them out. If we can identify who's providing the inside information, we might be able to end this before it gets worse. Kate stared at him in disbelief. You want to use our daughter as bait? No, that's not what I'm saying. William's voice was sharp with frustration. Security thinks we can control the situation better at Windsor. It's our territory, our staff, our protocols. If we cancel now, they'll just find another opportunity, and next time we might not have advance warning. Kate pulled away from him, her protective instincts flaring. I won't put Charlotte at risk based on what security thinks. This is our daughter we're talking about, not some tactical operation. Don't you think I know that? William snapped, then immediately softened his tone. I'm sorry. I haven't slept in 36 hours, and I'm trying to balance keeping her safe with catching whoever is doing this. Kate sank back into the armchair, her mind racing through possibilities and probabilities. Every option seemed to carry unacceptable risks. Cancel the competition, and they would be prisoners in their own home, waiting for the next threat to materialize. Proceed as planned, and they might be walking into a trap. Show me the new communications, she said quietly. William hesitated, then pulled out his phone and scrolled through several screens before handing it to her. These came through encrypted channels in the last 6 hours. Kate read the messages, her horror growing with each line. Saturday will be perfect. The little princess will be focused on her performance, distracted. Security will be spread thin across the grounds, trying to manage both the competition and the crowd control. Entry point confirmed through the maintenance gate on the east side. Shift change at 14:30 provides optimal window. Target will be in the practice ring from 15:15 to 15:45. Contingency plans in place if primary approach fails. The parking area offers multiple exit routes and reduced surveillance coverage. Kate's hands shook as she read. These weren't the vague threats of a disturbed individual. This was military-level planning, professional surveillance, operational detail that suggested either extensive inside knowledge or sophisticated reconnaissance capabilities. There's more, William said grimly, taking the phone back. Financial intelligence has identified some unusual patterns. Large cash deposits into several offshore accounts linked to shell companies. Someone is funding this operation, and they have significant resources. How much money are we talking about? Enough to hire professionals. Enough to buy inside information from multiple sources. Enough to sustain a long-term operation if necessary. Kate felt the familiar sensation of the walls closing in around her. This wasn't just a deranged fan or an opportunistic criminal. This was organized, well-funded, and had been planned over an extended period. The implications were terrifying. Who would do this, she asked. Who would target Charlotte specifically? She's just a child. William sat down across from her, his expression grave. The analysts have several theories. It could be political, someone trying to send a message to the monarchy. It could be financial, a kidnapping plot with ransom demands. Or it could be personal, someone with a grudge against our family specifically. Personal? What kind of personal grudge could anyone have against an 8-year-old girl? Not against Charlotte directly, William clarified. Against us. Against what we represent. Against the institution itself. Charlotte would be symbolic. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with horrific possibility. Kate thought of all the public criticism the royal family faced, the constant scrutiny of their spending, their privileges, their very existence. Most of it was harmless political discourse, but some of it crossed lines into genuine hatred. "There's something else," William continued reluctantly. "Something James didn't tell you earlier because we weren't certain of the connection. But, now." Kate braced herself for another revelation, another layer of nightmare to process. 3 weeks ago, there was an incident at Charlotte's school. Nothing dramatic, a substitute teacher who seemed overly interested in Charlotte's daily routine, asking specific questions about her pickup times, her extracurricular activities. The regular staff thought it was just enthusiastic interest from someone new, but, in light of everything else. "You think someone tried to infiltrate her school?" "It's possible. The substitute hasn't been seen since, and the agency that supposedly sent her has no record of anyone by that name." Kate closed her eyes, trying to process the scope of what they were facing. Charlotte's entire world had been systematically studied, mapped, infiltrated. School, home, recreational activities, nowhere was truly safe. "I want to see her," Kate said suddenly, standing up. "I need to check on Charlotte." "Kate, security said not to go near the children's rooms until they've finished repositioning." "I don't care what security said," Kate interrupted, her voice carrying steel. "Someone has been stalking my daughter for months, possibly longer. I'm going to make sure she's safe, and I'm going to do it now." William started to protest, then seemed to recognize the futility of arguing with her maternal instincts. "I'll come with you." They moved through the palace corridors together, their footsteps muffled by thick carpets. Kate noticed the increased security presence immediately, officers stationed at intervals that had been empty just hours before, new faces she didn't recognize mixed in with familiar guards. The entire atmosphere of their home had shifted from comfortable familiarity to military alertness. Outside Charlotte's room, they found James consulting with 2 other officers. He looked up as they approached, his expression apologetic but firm. "Your Royal Highnesses, we're just finishing the installation of additional monitoring equipment. If you could give us another 10 minutes. "I'm going in now," Kate said, not breaking stride. "You can finish whatever you're doing, but I'm checking on my daughter." James stepped aside, recognizing the absolute determination in her voice. Kate pushed open the door to Charlotte's room, her heart pounding with irrational fear about what she might find. Charlotte lay sleeping peacefully in her canopy bed, surrounded by her collection of stuffed animals and the familiar detritus of childhood. Her breathing was deep and regular, one small hand clutching her favorite teddy bear. In sleep, she looked even younger than her 8 years, vulnerable and innocent in a way that made Kate's chest tight with protective fury. Kate moved to the bedside and gently brushed a strand of blonde hair away from Charlotte's forehead. Her daughter stirred slightly but didn't wake, secure in the unconscious knowledge that she was safe and loved. The contrast between Charlotte's peaceful slumber and the chaos swirling around her was almost unbearable. William joined Kate beside the bed, his own expression softening as he looked down at their daughter. "She has no idea," he murmured. "No idea that people are watching her, planning whatever they're planning." "And she shouldn't have to know," Kate replied fiercely. "She should be able to sleep without wondering if someone is watching through her windows. She should be able to play in the garden without fear. She should be able to compete in her writing competition without it becoming a security operation." "I know," William said quietly. "But, right now, keeping her ignorant and keeping her safe might be mutually exclusive." Kate looked around the room, now seeing it through new eyes. The windows that had always provided natural light and views of the garden were now potential surveillance points. The bookshelf filled with beloved stories could conceal listening devices. Even the innocent teddy bears could hide cameras. "They've stolen her childhood," she whispered. "Even if we catch them, even if we stop whatever they're planning, they've already taken something from her that she can never get back." William wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood together in the quiet room, watching their daughter sleep. Outside, Kate could hear the subtle sounds of the security team's activities, radio communications, footsteps in the corridor, the hum of electronic equipment being installed. "What do we do about Saturday?"
Kate asked finally. I don't know yet, William admitted.
But, we have 48 hours to figure it out. 48 hours to decide whether we're going to hide from this threat or confront it. Kate leaned back against her husband's chest, drawing strength from his presence while her mind continued to race through possibilities. Whatever they decided, it would set the precedent for how they handled threats to their family going forward. Show weakness now, and Charlotte would spend her entire childhood looking over her shoulder. Show strength, and they might be able to reclaim some sense of normalcy. But, first, they had to survive the next few days. They had to keep Charlotte safe while investigators worked to unravel the conspiracy that had invaded their lives. They had to maintain the appearance of royal composure while privately grappling with fears that threatened to overwhelm them. As they finally left Charlotte's room, Kate made a silent vow. Whatever it took, whoever was behind this threat, she would protect her daughter. The carefree days of Charlotte's early childhood might be ending, but Kate would make sure she had a future to grow into one where she could ride horses and chase butterflies and sleep peacefully without fear. The morning of Charlotte's riding competition dawned gray and drizzly, matching Kate's mood as she stood at her bedroom window watching the security preparations unfold below. What should have been a joyful family outing had transformed into something resembling a military operation. Unmarked vehicles positioned at strategic points around the grounds, plainclothes officers disguised as maintenance workers, and enough surveillance equipment to monitor a small city. Kate had barely slept, her mind cycling through every possible scenario, every potential threat, every way this day could go terribly wrong. Charlotte, meanwhile, had bounced out of bed at dawn, chattering excitedly about her routine while Kate helped her into her pristine riding outfit. The contrast between her daughter's innocent enthusiasm and the dark reality surrounding them was almost unbearable. "Mummy, do you think Buttercup will remember the sequence we practiced?" Charlotte asked, referring to her favorite pony as Kate braided her hair into the regulation competition style. "I'm sure she will, darling," Kate replied, forcing brightness into her voice while her hands trembled slightly. "You've both worked so hard." Through the mirror, Kate could see William pacing in the background, his phone pressed to his ear as he received final updates from the security team. They had decided to proceed with the competition, but under conditions that would have made it unrecognizable to anyone who had attended previous events. The number of spectators had been severely limited, with extensive background checks on everyone permitted access to the grounds. Multiple backup plans were in place, including emergency evacuation procedures that Charlotte knew nothing about. The most difficult part was maintaining the illusion of normalcy for Charlotte while preparing for the worst-case scenario. Kate had practiced her emergency responses until they were automatic: how to shield Charlotte's body with her own, which direction to run for the nearest safe room, how to communicate with security using subtle hand signals. All while smiling and cheering for her daughter's performance. James appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "Your Royal Highnesses, the convoy is ready. We have confirmation that all security checkpoints are in position." Kate nodded, then knelt down to Charlotte's level. "Ready for your big day, sweetheart?" Charlotte's face lit up with pure joy. "I've been ready since I woke up. Can we stop for ice cream afterwards, if I do well?" "We'll see," Kate said, unable to promise anything when she didn't know what state they would be in by the end of the day. "Let's focus on having fun with Buttercup first." The drive to Windsor felt interminable. Kate sat beside Charlotte in the back of the armored vehicle, maintaining cheerful conversation while her eyes constantly scanned the roads and buildings they passed. She could see the protection officers in the vehicles ahead and, behind them, their alertness obvious despite their attempts to appear casual. Charlotte, oblivious to the tension, practiced her routine movements with her hands, quietly narrating each element of her performance. "And then, we go around the third barrel, and Buttercup always wants to go too fast there, but I have to keep her steady for the turn." Kate found herself memorizing every word, every gesture, storing up these moments of innocence against an uncertain future. If something happened today, if their worst fears came to pass, these might be among the last carefree moments Charlotte would ever have. When they arrived at the competition grounds, Kate was struck by how different everything looked. What was normally a relaxed, familial atmosphere had been transformed into something much more formal and constrained. The usual clusters of parents chatting and children running freely had been replaced by carefully managed small groups, each under discreet but obvious supervision. "It looks different," Charlotte observed, her first sign of noticing that something wasn't quite right. "They've made some changes to improve organization," William explained smoothly, taking Charlotte's hand as they walked toward the registration area.
"You know how these events can get a bit chaotic."
Charlotte accepted this explanation with the easy trust of childhood, but Kate could see her daughter's sharp eyes taking in details: the unusual number of adults in suits, the way conversations stopped when their family approached, the subtle but noticeable increase in formality from event staff who had known Charlotte since she was tiny. The registration process, normally a quick exchange of pleasantries, had been expanded into a comprehensive security check disguised as administrative procedure. While Charlotte chatted with her instructor about the course layout, Kate and William were briefed on evacuation routes and emergency protocols by officials posing as event coordinators. "Phase 1 is in progress," James murmured as he passed behind them. "All participants and spectators have been screened. No anomalies detected so far." Kate felt a brief moment of relief, quickly replaced by renewed tension. The absence of immediate threats didn't mean they were safe, it just meant that whatever was planned hadn't begun yet. Charlotte was scheduled to compete in the third group, giving them nearly 2 hours to wait. Kate had suggested they remain in the car until just before Charlotte's turn, but their daughter was too excited to sit still, too eager to see her friends and check on Buttercup. So they found themselves in the spectator area, surrounded by other families while security officers watched from every conceivable angle.
"Kate? Kate Middleton?"
The voice behind her made Kate's blood freeze. She turned to find a woman approaching with a bright smile, someone she didn't recognize but who clearly knew her. In the current circumstances, any unexpected interaction felt potentially dangerous.
"I'm sorry," Kate said carefully, "do we know each other?" "Oh, I'm Sarah Bennett. My daughter Emma is in Charlotte's riding class."
"I've been hoping to meet you properly for months." Kate glanced quickly at William, who was already subtly signaling to security. Within seconds, she could see officers moving to discreet positions around them while maintaining the appearance of casual observation. "How lovely to meet you," Kate replied, forcing warmth into her voice while studying the woman's face for any sign of deception or hidden agenda.
"Which one is Emma?"
As Sarah pointed out her daughter, Kate found herself analyzing everything about the interaction. Was this genuine parental enthusiasm, or was Sarah Bennett another piece in the puzzle they were trying to solve? Had she approached them naturally, or had she been guided into position by someone else? The conversation continued for several minutes, touching on typical parental topics: the children's progress, the quality of instruction, plans for future competitions. On the surface, it was perfectly normal, the kind of interaction Kate had dozens of times at similar events. But, underneath her polite responses, she was cataloging details: Sarah's nervous laugh when discussing her background, the way she seemed to know more about Charlotte's schedule than a casual acquaintance should, the expensive watch on her wrist that seemed inconsistent with her claim of being a single mother working part-time. When Sarah finally moved away to check on her own daughter's preparation, Kate felt physically exhausted from the effort of maintaining normalcy while remaining hypervigilant. "What did you think of her?" she asked William quietly.
"Hard to tell," he replied. "Could be completely innocent, or could be exactly what we're looking for. James is running background checks now."
The waiting became almost unbearable as Charlotte's competition time approached. Kate watched her daughter warm up with Buttercup, her small figure perfectly confident atop the pony she had bonded with over months of lessons. Charlotte's instructor, Mrs. Williams, supervised the practice session with her usual calm expertise, but Kate noticed the way the older woman's eyes constantly swept the surrounding area.
"Mummy, will you watch my whole routine?"
Charlotte called out as she guided Buttercup through a practice turn.
"Even the boring parts?"
"Every single second," Kate promised, her voice thick with emotion.
"I wouldn't miss any of it."
As the second group finished their performances and Charlotte's group was called to prepare, Kate felt her anxiety spike to almost unbearable levels. This was it, the window of time that had been specifically mentioned in the intercepted communications.
If something was going to happen, it would be in the next 30 minutes.
Charlotte mounted Buttercup with practiced ease, her face serious with concentration now as she prepared to demonstrate months of hard work. Kate positioned herself at the viewing area with the clearest sight lines to the course, William beside her and security officers at predetermined positions around the grounds. The announcer's voice crackled over the public address system. Next up, we have Charlotte Wales riding Buttercup, representing the Windsor Equestrian Club. Kate's heart hammered against her ribs as Charlotte entered the ring. Her daughter sat tall in the saddle, her posture perfect, her expression focused and determined. For a moment, watching Charlotte guide Buttercup through the opening sequence, Kate forgot about threats and surveillance and conspiracy. This was her little girl, pursuing something she loved, striving to do her best. Then, Charlotte reached the third obstacle, the one mentioned specifically in the intelligence reports, and Kate's attention sharpened to laser focus. She found herself holding her breath as Charlotte approached the jump, scanning the crowd around the ring for any sign of unusual movement. Buttercup cleared the obstacle beautifully, and Charlotte's face broke into a quick smile before she refocused on the course ahead. Kate felt a moment of pure pride cut through her fear. Whatever else happened, Charlotte was performing brilliantly. But, as they moved toward the barrel racing portion of the course, the section that would require Charlotte's complete concentration, Kate noticed something that made her stomach drop. In the crowd on the opposite side of the ring, a figure in maintenance coveralls was moving against the general flow of spectators, heading toward a position that would put him directly in Charlotte's path during the final sequence. Kate caught William's eye and nodded toward the figure. She saw him immediately reach for his communication device, saw the subtle shift in posture from security officers around the perimeter. But Charlotte was already entering the barrel sequence, completely focused on her performance, unaware of anything beyond her partnership with Buttercup. The figure in coveralls had reached the fence line now, his hands moving towards something concealed beneath his jacket. Kate started to rise from her seat, maternal instinct overriding security protocols, when she saw James moving swiftly through the crowd toward the potential threat. Charlotte was halfway through the barrel sequence, Buttercup responding perfectly to her guidance, when the confrontation began. Kate watched in horror as James tackled the figure in coveralls, bringing him down just feet from where Charlotte would pass in her final turn. The commotion was brief but unmistakable. Charlotte, focused on her riding, didn't see the takedown, but Buttercup felt the disruption in the atmosphere and began to shy nervously. Kate watched her daughter fight to maintain control, her small hands steady on the reins as she guided the pony through the remainder of the course. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice carried over the growing murmur of concern from the crowd, "we're experiencing a minor technical difficulty. Please remain in your seats while we address the situation." Charlotte completed her routine flawlessly, bringing Buttercup to a perfect stop at the center of the ring and raising her hand to acknowledge the applause. But Kate could see confusion beginning to creep into her daughter's expression as she noticed the unusual activity around the perimeter. Within minutes, the situation was contained. The figure in coveralls was quietly removed from the grounds, and the competition continued with what appeared to be minimal disruption. But Kate knew that everything had changed. The threat they had feared, the danger they had prepared for, had been real and immediate. As Charlotte exited the ring, her face flushed with pride and excitement, Kate struggled to maintain her composure. Her daughter had just delivered a beautiful performance while unknowingly riding past someone who had intended her harm. "Did you see my whole routine, Mummy?" Charlotte asked eagerly as she dismounted. "Buttercup was perfect, wasn't she?" "You were both absolutely perfect," Kate managed, pulling Charlotte into a fierce hug that lasted longer than usual. Over Charlotte's head, she caught James's eye. He nodded grimly. They had prevented whatever had been planned for this moment, but the investigation was far from over. Questions remained about how the threat had gotten so close, about who else might be involved, about what would happen next. For now, though, Charlotte was safe in her arms, chattering happily about her performance while the adult world of security and danger swirled invisibly around her. Kate held her daughter tight and tried to absorb every detail of this moment, the weight of Charlotte's small body, the excitement in her voice, the sweet scent of her hair mixed with the familiar smell of horses and hay. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new questions about who they could trust and how far the conspiracy reached. But today, Charlotte had ridden beautifully, had pursued her passion with courage and skill, had experienced the joy of achievement despite the shadows that surrounded her. It would have to be enough. For now, the interrogation room beneath Scotland Yard was sterile and windowless, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on the face of the man they had apprehended at Charlotte's writing competition. Kate sat behind one-way glass, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. Beside her, William stared at the suspect with barely controlled fury, while Detective Chief Inspector Morrison provided a running commentary on the questioning taking place on the other side of the glass.
"His name is Marcus Thornfield," Morrison explained, consulting her notes.
"Former military, discharged under questionable circumstances 3 years ago. Since then, he's worked various security contracts through private firms. What's interesting is that 6 months ago, he was employed by a company that provides supplementary personnel for royal events."
Kate's stomach lurched. "He's worked our events before?" "Possibly. We're cross-referencing his employment records with the guest lists and staff rosters from every royal engagement in the past year. If he's been in proximity to your family before, we'll find it."
Through the glass, Kate watched as Thornfield responded to questions with the practiced deflection of someone who had been trained to resist interrogation. His answers were minimal, calculated, giving away nothing that might compromise whatever operation he had been part of. But there was something in his eyes when Charlotte's name was mentioned, a flash of what looked almost like regret. "He's not working alone," Kate observed.
"Someone gave him the detailed information about Charlotte's routine, about the security arrangements. Someone with intimate access to our lives."
"That's our primary concern," Morrison agreed. "Mr. Thornfield is essentially a hired gun. The real threat is whoever has been providing him with intelligence." The questioning continued for another hour, but yielded little beyond confirmation of what they already suspected. Thornfield had been paid substantial amounts of money to conduct surveillance on Charlotte and to be in position at specific times and locations. He claimed not to know the identity of his employers, communicating only through encrypted channels and dead drops. When they finally left Scotland Yard, Kate felt more unsettled than ever. Catching Thornfield should have felt like a victory, but instead it highlighted how much they still didn't know. Someone in their inner circle was feeding information to hostile parties, and that person was still out there, still watching, still planning.
The drive back to Kensington Palace was conducted in tense silence.
Charlotte, exhausted from the excitement of her competition and the late hour, had fallen asleep in the car, her head resting against Kate's shoulder. The weight of her daughter's trust, her complete faith that her parents would keep her safe, felt overwhelming. Back home, Kate helped Charlotte into her pajamas and tucked her into bed, maintaining the gentle routine that provided stability in an increasingly unstable world. Charlotte mumbled sleepily about her successful performance, about how proud she was of Buttercup, about the trophy she had earned for her age group.
"Will I be able to compete again next month, Mummy?"
Charlotte asked as Kate smoothed the covers around her.
Kate hesitated, unsure how to answer.
The next competition was 6 weeks away, but given what they had learned today, she couldn't imagine exposing Charlotte to that kind of risk again.
"We'll see, sweetheart," she said finally. "Let's just enjoy your success from today for now."
After Charlotte fell asleep, Kate found William in his study, surrounded by security briefings and personnel files. The formal portraits of his ancestors looked down from the walls, their painted eyes seeming to judge his ability to protect his family legacy.
"Any progress on identifying our inside source?"
Kate asked, settling into the chair across from his desk.
William looked up from a thick folder, his expression grim. "Too much progress, actually.
The list of people with access to Charlotte's detailed schedule is longer than we thought. Staff, security personnel, administrative assistants, even some of the vendors who service our events regularly."
Kate picked up one of the files, flipping through pages of background information on people she had trusted with her family's most private moments. "What about Sarah Bennett? The mother I spoke with at the competition?"
"Clean, as far as we can tell.
Single mother, works part-time at a dental practice, daughter genuinely enrolled in the writing program for over a year. If she's involved, she's very well positioned and extremely patient." Kate set down the file, frustrated by the lack of clear answers. "So we're back to suspecting everyone and trusting no one."
"Not everyone," William corrected, but his tone wasn't entirely convincing. Over the following days, their home took on the atmosphere of an armed camp. Additional security sweeps were conducted daily, checking for surveillance devices and monitoring equipment. Staff members were subjected to more rigorous background checks and polygraph examinations. Charlotte's routine was completely overhauled, with spontaneous changes to her schedule and random variations in security protocols.
The strain began to show on everyone.
Charlotte, while still unaware of the specific threats, could sense the increased tension around her. She became quieter, more clingy, asking more questions about why there were so many new faces among the staff and why her favorite activities kept being cancelled or rescheduled. "Mummy, are we in trouble?" she asked one morning while Kate helped her dress for a scaled-back day of lessons within the palace walls. Kate knelt down to Charlotte's level, choosing her words carefully. "No, darling, you're not in trouble at all.
We're just being extra careful about some things right now." "Is that why Mrs. Patterson isn't working here anymore?"
Kate's blood froze. Mrs. Patterson, their longtime housekeeper, had been quietly removed from her position 2 days earlier after irregularities were found in her financial records. Large cash deposits that she couldn't adequately explain had raised red flags with the security investigators. Mrs. Patterson had to take care of some family matters, Kate said carefully.
"She might not be back for a while."
Charlotte nodded solemnly, but Kate could see the confusion and hurt in her daughter's eyes. These were people Charlotte had known since birth, familiar faces who had been constant presences in her world. Losing them without explanation was damaging her sense of security and stability. That afternoon, while Charlotte was having her tutoring session, Kate was summoned to an emergency briefing in William's study. She found him with James and DCI Morrison, their expressions grave as they reviewed what appeared to be surveillance footage.
"We've had a breakthrough," Morrison announced without preamble.
"One of our undercover officers managed to trace some of the financial transactions back to their source." She activated the laptop on William's desk, bringing up bank records and transaction histories. The payments to Thornfield and at least 2 other operatives were facilitated through a series of shell companies, but we've managed to penetrate the layers of obfuscation.
Kate leaned forward, studying the screen. "What did you find?"
"The ultimate source of funding appears to be connected to Alexander Petrov, a Russian oligarch with known ties to organized crime and state-sponsored activities. He's been under investigation by multiple international agencies for money laundering and political interference operations."
William frowned. Why would a Russian oligarch be targeting Charlotte specifically?
"We don't think it's about Charlotte personally," Morrison explained.
"Our analysts believe this is part of a broader destabilization campaign.
Target high-profile figures, create security incidents, undermine confidence in British institutions."
Charlotte was selected because she represents the future of the monarchy. Attacking her would send a powerful psychological message.
Kate felt sick. The idea that her daughter had been chosen as a symbol, a target in some grand political chess game, was almost too horrible to contemplate. "But that still doesn't explain how they got such detailed information about our private schedules," William pointed out. "Petrov's money might be funding the operation, but someone here is providing intelligence."
Morrison nodded grimly. "Which brings us to the difficult part of this briefing. We've identified the most likely source of the security breach."
She pulled up another file, and Kate gasped when she saw the photograph. It was Thomas Webb, William's private secretary, a man who had been with them for over 3 years and had access to virtually every aspect of their lives.
"Thomas?"
Kate breathed. "That's impossible. He's been completely loyal, completely trustworthy. That's what makes him so valuable as an asset," Morrison explained. "Mr. Webb has been in significant financial difficulty for the past 18 months. His ex-wife's medical bills, his children's school fees, gambling debts that he's been trying to hide.
The total amount is well over £200,000.
Kate stared at the evidence laid out before them, bank statements showing Webb's mounting debts, followed by mysterious cash deposits that coincided with major intelligence leaks about Charlotte's activities. "We believe he was initially approached as what seemed like a legitimate business opportunity," Morrison continued. "Someone offered to help him with his financial problems in exchange for what appeared to be harmless information, just scheduling details for a private security consulting firm. By the time he realized the true nature of what he was involved in, he was too compromised to withdraw. William stood and walked to the window, his back rigid with anger and betrayal. Thomas Webb wasn't just an employee, he was someone William had considered a friend, someone who had shared family dinners and private moments, someone Charlotte knew and trusted.
Where is he now? William asked without turning around.
Under surveillance, but unaware that we've identified him. We want to use him to trace the full extent of the network, identify any other compromised individuals, and potentially feed false information to disrupt future operations. Kate felt a mixture of relief and revulsion. Relief that they had identified the source of the breach, but revulsion at how thoroughly their privacy had been violated by someone they had trusted implicitly.
What about Charlotte's safety in the meantime? She asked.
Mr. Webb's access to current scheduling information has been quietly restricted without his knowledge, James explained.
He's now receiving false schedules and outdated security protocols. If our theory is correct, any future attempts to target Princess Charlotte will be based on incorrect information.
Kate nodded, but part of her wondered how many other Thomas Webbs might be hidden within their circle of trust. How many other people were struggling with financial problems, personal issues, or hidden vulnerabilities that could be exploited by hostile actors? I want to see him, she said suddenly.
I want to confront Thomas directly.
Morrison shook her head.
That would compromise the ongoing operation. If Mr. Webb realizes we've identified him, he might warn his handlers or destroy evidence we haven't recovered yet.
So we just pretend everything is normal?
We continue to smile and interact with him while knowing he's been selling information about our daughter?
For now, yes, Morrison confirmed. It's the best way to protect Princess Charlotte going forward and to ensure we capture the full extent of this network. Kate felt the weight of another performance being added to her daily routine. Not only did she have to maintain normalcy for Charlotte's sake, now she had to pretend continued trust and friendship with the man who had betrayed them so completely. That evening, as she helped Charlotte with her bath, Kate found herself studying her daughter's face in the warm light of the bathroom. Charlotte chattered about her lessons, about the books she was reading, about plans for the weekend that might or might not come to pass depending on security concerns. "Mummy, you look sad," Charlotte observed with the perceptiveness that children sometimes possessed.
"Are you worried about something?"
Kate managed to smile, brushing a strand of wet hair back from Charlotte's forehead. "Just thinking about how much I love you, that's all." Charlotte beamed at this, splashing happily in the bubbles.
"I love you too, Mummy.
More than all the horses in the world." Later that night, after Charlotte was asleep and William was attending to correspondence, Kate sat alone in their sitting room and tried to process everything they had learned. The immediate physical threat might have been neutralized with Thornfield's arrest, but the deeper violation continued. Someone was still out there, still planning, still using their trusted employee to gather intelligence. Tomorrow, she would have to smile at Thomas Webb, discuss scheduling matters with him, perhaps even share a cup of tea while knowing that he was documenting every detail for hostile foreign actors. The performance was becoming exhausting, the constant vigilance draining her emotional reserves. But Charlotte was safe, at least for now. The investigation was progressing, the security arrangements were being strengthened, and the network of threats was slowly being unraveled. It would have to be enough to sustain her through whatever came next. 3 weeks after Thomas Webb's betrayal had been discovered, Kate found herself standing in the nursery at Kensington Palace at 3 a.m, holding Charlotte as her daughter sobbed uncontrollably against her shoulder. The carefully constructed walls of normalcy they had built around Charlotte's world had finally begun to crumble, and the 8-year-old was experiencing the full weight of anxiety and fear that her parents had been carrying alone. It had started with nightmares. Charlotte would wake screaming about strangers in the garden, about people watching her through the windows, about bad men trying to take her away from her family. Kate had initially hoped these were just typical childhood fears, perhaps triggered by the subtle changes in their routine and the increased security presence. But, as the nightmares became more frequent and more specific, she realized that Charlotte's subconscious mind was processing threats that her conscious mind didn't fully understand. "Mummy, I'm scared," Charlotte whispered through her tears. "I keep dreaming that someone is coming to take me away, and you can't find me." Kate's heart shattered as she held her daughter closer, feeling the small body trembling with fear that no child should have to experience.
"You're safe, sweetheart. Daddy and I are right here, and we're never going to let anyone hurt you."
But, even as she spoke the words, Kate wondered how long she could continue making promises she wasn't entirely certain she could keep. The investigation into the conspiracy had revealed layers of planning and coordination that went far beyond what they had initially imagined. Thomas Webb had been providing intelligence to his handlers for over 2 years, and the information he had passed along included not just Charlotte's schedules, but detailed floor plans of their residences, security protocols, and even psychological profiles of the royal children. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. Webb had documented Charlotte's favorite hiding places during games of hide and seek, her preferred routes through the palace gardens, her relationships with various staff members, and her emotional responses to different types of stress. He had essentially created a comprehensive manual for anyone wanting to manipulate or harm an 8-year-old girl. William entered the nursery quietly, his hair disheveled from being awakened by Charlotte's cries. He looked exhausted, aged by the constant pressure of trying to protect his family while maintaining his royal duties. The past month had taken a visible toll on him, carving new lines around his eyes and adding gray to his temples. "Another bad dream?" he asked softly, reaching out to stroke Charlotte's hair. Charlotte turned toward her father, her face streaked with tears.
"Daddy, why do the bad people want to hurt me? What did I do wrong?"
The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Kate saw William's jaw clench as he struggled to find words that could comfort an 8-year-old without lying about the dangers that surrounded their family. "You didn't do anything wrong, Princess," William said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes there are people in the world who make bad choices, but that's not your fault. That's why Mummy and Daddy and all our friends work so hard to keep you safe." Charlotte nodded solemnly, but Kate could see that the explanation wasn't enough to ease her daughter's fears. How could it be, when the adults around her were clearly frightened as well?
"Can I sleep in your room tonight?"
Charlotte asked, looking between her parents with eyes that seemed far too old for her face. "Of course," Kate said immediately, lifting Charlotte into her arms.
"We can have a sleepover, just the 3 of us."
As they settled Charlotte between them and the master bedroom, Kate caught William's eye over their daughter's head. They had been having this same conversation every night for the past week, and she could see her own questions reflected in his expression.
How long could they continue living like this? How much damage were they doing to Charlotte's development by maintaining this constant state of alert?
When would she be able to play freely again, to sleep peacefully in her own room, to experience the simple joys of childhood without fear?
The next morning brought more disturbing news.
DCI Morrison arrived for their daily security briefing with information that made Kate's blood run cold.
"We've intercepted new communications," Morrison announced without preamble. "The operation hasn't been abandoned after Thornfield's arrest. If anything, it seems to have escalated."
Kate and William exchanged glances across the breakfast table where they had been trying to maintain cheerful conversation with Charlotte before her tutoring session began.
"What kind of escalation?" William asked quietly. "References to Phase 2 and contingency protocols.
Our analysts believe they're shifting from surveillance and potential kidnapping to something more permanent."
Kate felt the room spin around her.
"You mean they want to kill her?"
Morrison nodded grimly.
"The language in the intercepted messages suggests they view the current security measures as too effective for their original plan. They're discussing alternative approaches that would be final." Charlotte looked up from her cereal, her young face curious about the hushed conversation between the adults.
"What are you talking about? Are you planning something fun?" Kate forced a bright smile. "Just boring grown-up stuff, darling. Eat your breakfast so you're ready for your lessons." But, internally, she was screaming.
The threats against her daughter had evolved from kidnapping to murder, and they were discussing it over breakfast while Charlotte ate her cereal and planned her day. The surreal nature of their situation felt increasingly unbearable. After Charlotte left for her tutoring session, accompanied by more security officers than ever before, Kate finally reached her breaking point. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice rising despite her efforts to remain calm. "I can't pretend that everything is normal while people are planning to murder my daughter. I can't smile and wave at public events while Charlotte has nightmares every night. I can't keep performing this charade of royal composure when I'm falling apart inside." William reached for her hand, but she pulled away, pacing across the morning room with agitated energy.
"Kate, we're doing everything we can." "Are we?" Kate interrupted, spinning to face him. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like we're letting other people make decisions about our daughter's safety while we maintain plausible deniability.
We're letting investigators use our child as bait to catch bigger fish while she develops trauma that will last her entire life."
"What do you want to do?" William asked, his own frustration beginning to show. "Cancel all public engagements? Move the family into hiding? Abandon our responsibilities to the crown? If that's what it takes to keep Charlotte alive, then, yes,"
Kate shouted, no longer caring who might overhear.
"Our responsibility to our children comes before our responsibility to anyone else, including the crown."
Morrison cleared her throat uncomfortably.
"Your Royal Highnesses, I understand this is an extremely difficult situation, but I need to update you on some developments that might affect your decision-making."
Kate turned toward her, still trembling with anger and fear.
"What now?"
"Thomas Webb attempted to make contact with his handlers yesterday.
We intercepted the communication, and it suggests he's becoming increasingly desperate.
His gambling debts have continued to mount, and he's requesting immediate extraction from his position."
"Good," Kate said flatly. "Let them take him. Get him away from our family."
"It's not that simple," Morrison continued. "If Webb disappears suddenly, it will signal to his handlers that their operation has been compromised. They might accelerate their timeline for Charlotte, moving to immediate action rather than continued planning." William stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back in a gesture Kate recognized as his way of trying to maintain control when everything was spinning out of control.
"So we're trapped," he said quietly.
"We can't remove Webb without potentially triggering an immediate attack on Charlotte.
We can't continue as we are without slowly destroying our daughter's mental health. And we can't reduce security without exposing her to unacceptable risks."
"There is one option we haven't discussed," Morrison said carefully.
"We could stage Webb's apparent death. Make it look like he was eliminated by his handlers for security reasons.
It would end his access to your family while potentially making his handlers believe their operation was still secure."
Kate stared at her in disbelief. "You want to fake the death of someone who betrayed our family? Someone who put our daughter's life at risk?"
"I want to end this threat to Princess Charlotte with minimal risk of escalation," Morrison corrected. "Mr. Webb is a victim in this situation as much as he is a perpetrator. His financial desperation was exploited by sophisticated operators who gradually drew him deeper into their network. He had choices," Kate said fiercely. "He could have come to us when he first realized what was happening. He could have asked for help with his debts.
He chose to continue selling information about our daughter instead."
"Kate," William said softly, still looking out the window.
"Morrison's right about the tactical considerations.
If we want to end this without putting Charlotte at greater risk, we might have to make some uncomfortable compromises." Kate felt as though the ground was shifting beneath her feet. The people she trusted to protect her family were asking her to help save the man who had betrayed them, to participate in an elaborate deception that would allow Thomas Webb to escape consequences for his actions.
"What about Charlotte?" she asked finally. "What about the damage that's already been done to her sense of security, her ability to trust the people around her? What about the nightmares and the fear and the loss of innocence that can never be restored?" Morrison's expression softened slightly.
"Princess Charlotte is resilient, Your Royal Highness.
Children are often more adaptable to changing circumstances than adults expect them to be.
With proper support and counseling, she can recover from this experience."
"Can she?"
Kate asked, her voice breaking.
"Can any of us?"
That afternoon, while Charlotte napped under the watchful eyes of her security detail, Kate found herself in the chapel at Kensington Palace, seeking some kind of solace in the quiet space where generations of her husband's family had prayed for guidance and strength. The carved angels looked down from the vaulted ceiling, their stone faces serene and unchanging despite the human dramas that had unfolded beneath them over the centuries. Kate knelt in one of the ancient pews and tried to pray, but the words wouldn't come. How could she ask for divine intervention when she felt abandoned by both God and man? Her phone buzzed with a message from Charlotte's tutor. "Princess Charlotte is asking for you. She seems distressed about something." Kate hurried to the schoolroom, where she found Charlotte sitting at her desk with tears streaming down her face, her mathematics workbook forgotten in front of her. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Kate asked, immediately pulling Charlotte into her arms. "I heard people talking," Charlotte whispered. "They said someone might try to hurt me. They said the bad people are still out there." Kate's heart sank. Despite all their efforts to shield Charlotte from the worst of what was happening, their 8-year-old daughter was beginning to piece together the truth from overheard conversations and observed behaviors. "Who told you that?" Kate asked gently. "I didn't mean to listen," Charlotte said quickly, as though she was worried about getting in trouble. "I was looking for you, and I heard voices in the hallway. They were talking about me, about keeping me safe from bad people who want to take me away." Kate held Charlotte tighter, feeling the weight of every decision they had made over the past month. Their attempts to maintain normalcy had failed. Their efforts to shield Charlotte from fear had been unsuccessful. Their carefully constructed barriers between their daughter and the harsh realities of royal life were crumbling. "Charlotte," Kate said finally, pulling back to look into her daughter's eyes, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. There are some people who want to hurt our family, but Daddy and I and lots of other people are working very hard to keep you safe. Sometimes that means things might feel different or scary, but you need to trust that we will always protect you." Charlotte nodded solemnly. "Are we going to have to go away?" "I don't know yet," Kate admitted, choosing honesty over false reassurance. "We might need to make some changes to keep everyone safe. But whatever happens, we'll be together. Daddy and I and George and Louis will always be together." As they sat there in the quiet schoolroom, Charlotte curled against her mother's side, Kate made a silent decision. Whatever Morrison and the security services wanted to do about Thomas Webb, whatever compromises they thought were necessary for the greater good, Kate's priority was clear. She would do whatever it took to protect Charlotte, even if it meant defying protocols, challenging authority, or making enemies of the people who were supposed to be helping them. The performance was over. The pretense of normalcy was finished. If that meant the end of their royal duties, their public lives, even their position in the line of succession, so be it. Charlotte's safety and mental health were worth more than any crown, any duty, any tradition. Outside the schoolroom windows, Kate could see security officers patrolling the grounds, their vigilance a constant reminder of the threats that surrounded their family. But, inside this quiet room, holding her frightened daughter, she finally felt a sense of clarity about what needed to happen next. The breaking point had been reached. Now it was time to fight back.